Welcome to Stand Up for Doctors. I'm your host, Kim Downey. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to welcome Dr. John Huff. Thanks for joining us today, John.
Hi, Kim. Thank you for having me.
I'm really happy to. So I usually start by saying how we met, and I had reached out to you back on December 2nd as we share some terrific mutual connections, including Doctors Todd Otten and Kristen Yates. And you thanked me for connecting. And I shared with you the intro episode of my YouTube channel by way of letting you know about my motivation for supporting physicians. And you
Mhm.
told me you appreciated the attention I'm bringing to the issues. And then you told me about your startup and said that you're enjoying the content I'm putting out and really happy to see it gaining good traction and that you appreciate the advocacy for physicians. So I
Absolutely.
thanked you and we had a phone call in January and I suggested some doctors you'd like to connect with and we've been keeping up.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, I just seen several, names that hadn't really formed connections with, but just seeing a lot of the same names and faces and people and that really piqued my interest and yeah, I was very appreciative of what you were putting out. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great. So I was so happy that when we had our conversation, and then this is what's come up from that, because I knew our audience would want to hear more from you. So by way of more formally introducing you,
Mhm.
as a hospital medicine leader, John has over a decade of experience starting and building successful hospitalist programs. Getting the right people and the right culture has been the key to maximizing potential and leading successful teams. As a healthcare consultant with a focus on patient experience and healthcare culture, John emphasizes communication strategies to elevate the relationships between healthcare workers and their patients. It's more than we know or simply being nice, it's how we connect. I think it's all about the connection. So I agree with
Yes.
you 100%. And John is excited to share these skills with other organizations. So that's what we'll be talking about today is how to build and maintain a successful hospitalist program, which isn't really just for hospitalists. It really means, as you told me, how to put the focus on a healthy culture that cultivates teamwork and minimizes burnout. And that's something we all need to hear about.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. It really applies. Hospital medicine is what I've worked in since finishing training, but the themes really apply, I think, to every department, every group. It really is about culture, and like you said, burnout has been an increasing topic, rightfully so. And one of the things that really drew me to the content you're putting out is all the other doctors that are out there that feel the
Mhm.
same way and are doing something about it. So yeah, excited to talk about it.
Right. Okay. Well, as we start our conversation, what would you most like our audience to know about you?
Well, I would say, interestingly, I'm pretty introverted. So for me to get on a podcast and talk about things I've done is a little bit unnatural to me, but it's fun. Yeah, I've been doing hospital medicine again since I finished training. I did internal medicine residency at University of Louisville, and from there helped start a hospitalist program with three colleagues. Um, Left that after about 3 years for another opportunity to build a program from the ground up, and so that's really been kind of a passion of mine. I found over the last several years is building programs. That's been exciting to me, to start with a seed and see it develop with a lot of help and a lot of cultivation into a successful program. And over the last couple of years, as you said, we started up a consulting group called Lion Oaks Healthcare Consulting to really help other hospitals learn how to develop hospital medicine programs. And also, we do some training on patient experience as well from more of a practical physician friendly standpoint, I would say.
Yeah, well, that's great. How did you come up with the name Lion Oaks?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it was really more of a leadership approach. My partner, Dr. David Yerkes, who's a colleague of mine in hospital medicine and co-founded Lion Oaks with me, uh, we really have a passion for leadership, and we thought that leadership is kind of a dichotomy. I say you need to be strong and fearless,
Hmm.
brave, not afraid to take chances, like a lion, but also you need to be deeply rooted. You need to be grounded in what you believe in. You need to be able to branch out. So two things I say that seem very different, but we thought kind of blended together to make what our view of a good leader should be.
Wow, that's terrific. I love that. I didn't ask you that in our
Thanks.
phone call, so I'm glad I
No, yeah,
saved it for now.
right. Thanks.
That's terrific. So, do you feel like, how did all this evolve into you becoming a leader and, in these organizations and then building it? Was it something that, you just had the internal like desire and motivation and skills, or were other people seeing that in you? How did it actually start to evolve?
I think a lot of leadership is, just seeing opportunities, um, and wanting to take them. When I took the job that I'm in now, which has been about 12 years ago, again, this hospital did not have a hospital medicine program. At that point, I had a few years under my belt in terms of helping to start a program. And it just seemed exciting to me. The hospital that I was joining, I felt like they had a lot of key pieces in place, and they were really just about to take off. I was excited about the vibe of the leadership there.
Mm,
But yeah, I think for me too, just the opportunity to kind of help guide it and lead it seemed exciting to me. It was a lot of on the job training. I think a lot of trial by
mhm,
fire,
mhm,
but it was fun. It was a challenge, but I enjoyed it. Not necessarily my comfort zone, but if anything else, I think it was good to force me out of my comfort zone a little bit and do some different things. But really, just had such a great support system.
Well,
It,
that's
it made
great. That's what I
made
was
it a
gonna
lot easier.
ask you, and that, yeah, that makes all the difference, and plus, and you've been there for 12 years.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
and it's
wow.
it's grown quite a bit. There were just two docs in the beginning. Now we have I think over 20 in the group, and I will say very, very low attrition. And again, I think that's a testament to the culture. I think if you um, treat people the right way and you get people that are a good fit, people want to stay
Mhm,
in the job. And so that's something we've been very proud of, is really to not have people leave the job because of the job.
mhm.
We
Yeah,
lost a few people for
absolutely.
for personal, life circumstances, but and that's something I tell candidates too when we interview. I think it's important if you're interviewing for a job to find out why they're hiring. Do you
Mhm,
need people because the organization can't hold on to people and they're leaving, or are they hiring because they're successful and they're growing? So I think that's always an important thing to bring up.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. So what are some of the tenants? How do you think this is working so well?
I think it all comes down to the people, really. We were very selective when we were hiring to get people that we thought fit the culture, probably more than anything. People that have gone through medical school and gone through residency, they're going to be bright people.
Mhm,
Their medical skills you expect will be where they need to be. But I think you have to be prepared to pass on good candidates on paper if they don't fit the culture,
mhm,
which is hard, especially in the beginning when you need help. But I think that's been the key is the interviews are, I think, very informal. It's more of an opportunity for me to get to know what type of person they are.
mhm,
Um, and so I think getting people that fit the culture, and we also have to be very open from our end in terms of the interview process. A lot of it comes really down to the hiring. So
mhm,
letting people know kind of what the good aspects and the not so good aspects are. I think you have to be very transparent.
mhm.
So I always viewed it as I can tell people what the situation is in an interview, or they can find out when they get there. And I don't think we didn't have a lot of red flags, but
Mhm,
it's a growing program. There's growing pains. So just to be able to say, hey, these are some things that we're working on.
mhm.
These are some things that are going really well. I think if people know what they're getting into, it
Right.
goes much better. And no job's perfect, but I think if you are transparent about your situation, then people will buy into that a lot easier.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you've said the word culture
Mhm.
multiple times, and that's kind of like a buzzword, I'd say, these days.
Yeah, it
So
seems to be.
is there a way that you can like what culture means to you, or how you would describe the culture of where you work, or the when you're going into organizations and you're trying to improve their culture, like what does all
Mhm.
that mean to you?
Yeah, I think it has to do with a lot of communication and what's the overall objective of the organization or the department or the group, and do people move move together in that same direction. I think the vision has to be communicated from the leadership to the team. I think it needs to be verbalized. And for me personally, I think culture is the best when it's not micromanaged. I think micromanagement leads to a
Mhm.
lot of burnout. So if you can communicate to your team what you're trying to accomplish and you trust that you hire good people that know how to make it happen, to me, I
Mhm.
think that's indicative of a really strong culture.
Mhm.
And I think we've been fortunate to have that here.
That's terrific. And you mentioned communication a couple times.
Mhm.
And of course, that has to be two ways. How would you say that you promote that communication back and forth from leadership to the boots on the ground?
As a medical director of a hospitals group, I think it's very important that I'm visible and participate. So I work as a full-time hospitalist as well as being a director. Um, Personally, I try to spend time in our workroom with the team as opposed to working off on my own, because I think you run the risk of being viewed too much as administrative and not as much
Hmm.
as clinical.
Hmm.
So that's been important, but um, and even with meetings, we don't meet just for the sake of meeting. I try to only meet if we have things to discuss.
Hmm.
Um, Early on, we would have monthly meetings. I think that's pretty standard, and not to criticize that, but I think in terms of what worked best for us, if it's informational, send it out in an email.
Hmm.
If you need to have conversations, have a meeting. Let your team know what you're going to talk about before you have the meeting so people can gather their thoughts. I think things are much more productive that way.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, to me, it doesn't matter who gets the credit.
Hmm.
Some of the best ideas we've had have been from group members and not from me. So just to be able to get input from the team members, it's very much a two-way street, like you said. And again, I think if you get people who fit that vision, and I know that the people that we hired are good, bright people, then I'm going to trust their
Hmm.
input.
Yeah, that's great. It's like you're living the things that make a good leader. It's you're walking the walk. You're not just talking the talk, you're walking
Well,
the walk.
try to, but really, when you have good people, it makes it so much easier. I say they make me look better than I probably would otherwise because they do such a good job. So
One thing when we were talking earlier that you had mentioned when we talked about like focusing on patient experience, or and then it might be better labeled patient connection. And things like we like to teach healthcare workers strategies to regain the doctor-patient relationship while navigating all the time constraints we have. If you'd
right.
like to speak to those things.
Yeah, patient experience, oddly enough, is not something 5 years ago I would have thought I would be talking about. I think patient experience probably gets, I think the concept of it has probably been mismanaged over the years, just across the board. As physicians, we all want our patients to have a good experience, but I think it is met with a little bit of resistance sometimes, and understandably so, because I think the approach is off, oftentimes. As a physician, we view our primary job as delivering good medical care. And sometimes what a patient wants isn't necessarily what's the right thing to do is. So, whether that's given an antibiotic for a viral infection, and we know that's not the right thing to do. If they don't get the thing that they're expecting, that can impact your patient experience or your patient satisfaction scores. So sometimes it's difficult to navigate that. And then sometimes too, I think we get advice that's not always practical. Um, as a hospitalist seeing 25 patients in a 12-hour shift, or a clinician in an outpatient setting that's seeing 30 or 35 patients in an 8-hour day. I don't know how they do that, but
Right.
you don't have all that time. So what we really focus on is practical ways to connect with patients. What a lot of it boils down to is just making a patient feel heard.
Mhm.
You don't necessarily have to agree with what they're saying, but you can at least acknowledge how they're feeling.
Mhm.
Empathy is a word that there's so much value in that word, but it's also, I think, become overused a lot, like friend or like or
Uh-huh.
something on social media.
Right.
But that really is the root of it, is you just making someone feel acknowledged. And sometimes I've found it's counterintuitive. Our natural responses aren't necessarily the right responses. And just as an example, I had a patient once that was admitted by the night shift, and I came to make rounds the next morning, and the nurse caught me outside of the room and she said, "Hey, he's not pleasant. He's pretty angry. He's been, very difficult to the staff all morning. So just a heads up." So, okay, thanks for the heads up. But I went in to see the guy. I said, "Hey, good morning. How are you?" And he immediately just started telling me how upset he was. He was angry because he spent 8 hours in the emergency room, uncomfortable bed, and didn't get any food, and all these things. And, my first instinct is to say, the ER is really busy. They were extraordinarily busy that night. Not everyone can be seen first. And also, if you weren't the first person seen, that's probably good that you weren't the sickest person.
Right.
So those are the
Exactly.
things that you want to say, but that's not what the guy needs to hear. And if you do that, it just extends that dissatisfaction. So you just flip the script and you try to disarm it and say, well, I'm sorry, you had a really long night. You
Mm-hmm.
had a bad night. I'm sorry. Um, I think I said, it's hard to sit down there that long when you don't feel well.
Mm-hmm.
And you can even see the body language change, from the shoulders being aggressive
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
relaxing a little bit. And then we say, make yourself an ally to a
Mm-hmm.
patient.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being part of the problem, now the patient says, okay, this guy gets it. And we move forward. So we say, okay, well, now let's talk, and let's get to the bottom of why you're here, and let's get you feeling better. And that makes that interaction better. That makes subsequent interactions better. That makes the day for the nursing staff much better. And that takes me 10 seconds, but the
Mm-hmm.
patient feels heard, he feels acknowledged, and you get that connection. So little things like that are what we teach. We look at cognitive science, behavioral science techniques that have been, studied and implemented in other fields aside from healthcare, um, to try to practically improve those patient relationships.
I think that's fantastic that you don't like take for granted that oh, we already know this stuff.
Right. Yeah. Things that are routine for us aren't routine for patients. And you have to keep in mind, in a hospital especially, a patient may be having the worst day of their life.
Mhm.
I mean, they could be. They're scared, they're sick, maybe they've never been in a hospital. Sometimes it's family members, you know,
Mhm.
on the chair taking notes with their notepad out,
Yeah.
and but you just have to understand, a lot of what we deal with is de-escalating. When you get patients that are scared, sometimes that manifests as being angry or unpleasant, but you just have to recognize kind of why they feel that way, why they're acting that way. And it's usually just simply acknowledging it, you
Mhm.
know?
Right, right. That sometimes fear is often underlying. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So you had told me that you might have like a just some little funny story.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that in terms of, excuse me, of things being routine. Um, Several years ago, I had to have a procedure, and I'd never been a patient before, aside from the routine checkups and things. And I was in pre-op, and I just remember a resident coming in, introduced himself, Dr. So and so from the Gold team, and proceeded to ask some basic questions and moved along. And uh, it struck me funny because having gone through training, I know that resident teams will often be labeled by a color: the blue team, the red team, the gold team. But
Okay.
just thinking, if people didn't know that, and the guy introduces himself as the gold team, they think, well, he
Right.
must be the best. He's on the gold team. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
right.
glad I didn't get the bronze guy or the silver guy, but maybe there's a platinum team that
Yeah.
it's for VIPs. So it just kind of struck me funny at the time, and
Right.
how people's minds can go. Maybe you got the gold team because it's the worst case, and is there something they're
Um,
not telling me? But
right, right, right.
but
And
you know,
you're like,
I
what does
got
that mean exactly?
right. So just little things like that, just if he had said I'm one of the residents with the anesthesia team, that would have set my mind at ease. And
Um,
likewise, actually, kind of on the flip side, actually, I had a resident once when I was with a family member, uh, and I thought she did a wonderful job. She came in and basically
mm,
anticipated, hey, this is a different person than I'm used to seeing, and
mm.
just said, I'm Dr. So and so. I'm a resident with the attending. I'm just going to ask some questions. She'll be in shortly. And that took 2 seconds, but then I can say, okay, I realize I'm not seeing someone that I didn't think I was seeing.
Right? No,
So
exactly. So
really well
something,
done there.
yeah, so something similar that happened to me is a few years ago. I went to see a certain doctor, and I'm just being vague, not to call anybody out,
Mm.
but so there were a few different steps before you were actually going to see the doctor. So one person does one thing, one person does another thing, and the first time I had been in this place in years, so I didn't really know anybody. So one's doing the one thing, one's doing something else, right? So then after I've already seen like a few people, then somebody comes in and just starts like asking me different questions or doing some different things that made me think, well, maybe this one's the doctor, but I didn't know
Right.
anybody and the person didn't introduce themselves. So I actually asked, I had to ask, I'm like, are you the doctor?
Right.
And what the person said is, oh, because so later what happened is when I walked out, I said to the front desk, I says, I don't think I'm really comfortable. Like I didn't even know that was a doctor. I actually had to ask. So to the person's credit, the person actually called me that night and apologized.
Oh,
And the person said that that the person wasn't sure if they knew me or not, so they thought it would be more awkward to introduce themselves if they had already met me.
yeah, I
But
can see
that,
that.
I mean, but I can safely say that I never met a patient without with walking in and I have my name tag and I say, hi, I'm Kim Downey. I'm going to be your physical therapist. Even if it's a 3-year-old child with autism, I would show them my and say, I'm Miss Kim, even if you think that they can't understand you. It's just like a standard thing and it's really important. So it
Right.
doesn't seem like there's ever a time unless it's an emergency, like literally, you have to save their life that minute
Sure.
that you can't take the time to introduce yourself.
Right. Goes a long way.
Yeah, exactly. Um, is there anything else that you'd like to share about your consulting company or the things that you're doing?
Well, really, the two primary focuses are hospital medicine consulting, and again, what we try to do is um, take what we've learned from starting two hospitalist groups that have fortunately been successful, and just sharing those strategies with other hospitals. Burnout and attrition is it's so prevalent right now. You have so many good doctors leaving medicine or contemplating leaving medicine, which is so unfortunate.
Mhm,
And certainly that's not limited to hospital medicine. I feel like after COVID in particular,
mhm,
I think that took a lot out of people. But what I've found is if you have the right culture, again, just to go back to that, and you run things the right way, doctors are very resilient people. They've gone through intense, rigorous training, and they train for the medical part. We're equipped to handle stressful medical situations and take care of sick people.
right.
That's really not the challenge. I think what drives a lot of people out is you know the function or dysfunction of a group or an organization, and a toxic culture. And so we want to keep good doctors in hospital medicine. We want to draw good doctors to hospital medicine. So that's really what we do. We don't get into the financial part. We don't get into any of that. It's really more structure and function. I've always said the best and worst thing about hospital medicine is there's no one way to do it. It's not a
Mhm,
one size fits all.
mhm,
So in terms of the hospital medicine consulting, that's really what we do is help groups optimize their culture and their performance. Or glad to help groups start up as well. Most places have a hospitalist program of some sort at this point, but so we're there to do that. And then from a patient experience standpoint, again, I view it more as patient connection.
mhm,
To me, that's important for physicians because if and I will say it's not just physicians. We would train nurses and pretty much anyone who has contact with patients. But if you can help docs and nurses learn to navigate these busy days, but still incorporate these practical
Mhm.
techniques, it makes your day better. My day's so much better since I've, studied and learned some of this, just to have better interactions with patients. So, the doctors, unfortunately, we get graded, basically critiqued on patient experience scores. And I think that's one of the things that leaves a bad taste in people's mouth is,
Mhm.
you feel like you're doing good work clinically, but then you may not get a good score from a patient experience standpoint. And you think, I did good work, I was nice. What's the issue? So, it is a little bit paternalistic in
Mhm.
some ways. So we really just focus on teaching staff to incorporate some of these behavioral cognitive science techniques to really not just make the patient's day better, but to make their day better as well. And I think if you do that, the scores kind of take care of themselves. So
Mhm.
I think it's important too for docs to hear that from practicing physicians. Again, I'm a full-time hospitalist. My partner's a full-time hospitalist. We get it.
Right, right,
We
right.
understand the hesitations and the concerns. So I think that carries some weight. I hope that carries some weight in terms of a little more credibility in terms of what we're saying.
Right, right. And if I haven't connected you already, I'm gonna have to connect you with Dr. Ryan McCarthy. He's a primary care doc in West Virginia, and he
Okay.
has a recent Kevin MD article, and it's called something like "When This Doctor Gets a 0-Star Review." So it speaks like exactly to what you were
Yeah.
talking about. So I'll have to
Yeah.
connect you with him. And then Dr. Drew Remignanti, he is a retired ER physician in New Hampshire. And he wrote a book, and he also, again, spoke to a lot of the things that you spoke about here
Yeah.
today. So I'm definitely going to connect you with the two of them. You'd like to know them.
Sure.
And so as we start to wind down our conversation, do you have any top tips for your colleagues from seasoned physicians to medical students or even those considering med school?
Oh wow, that's a lot. Um, I think just don't forget why you got into it. And, that goes a lot to the patient experience aspect. I didn't go to med school thinking I want to be a doctor so I can spend 8 hours in front of a computer
Right.
every day. I think all of us at some point have some, desire to have this connection with another human being. And it's really easy to lose sight of that when you're
Hmm.
bogged down with high census and metrics and meetings and, EMRs. So don't lose sight of why you did it. Um, at the end of the day, we're providing care to someone's mother or father, son, daughter, um, and there's a lot of value in that. So it is so easy to get burnt out because of the non-medical things, unfortunately.
Right.
Um, so don't lose sight of that. And also, for me personally, getting on LinkedIn and seeing your work and some of the other names you mentioned was something I needed to see. It was helpful to
Mhm.
see that there's this community of people that feel the same way and are doing, taking action to make positive changes. So that was really encouraging. So
So
if
I'm
you're
also
feeling
good.
something, you're probably not alone in feeling that.
Right, right. I'm also going to connect you with Dr. Bryce Bowers. He's just finishing up his residency, and he had said the same thing. I think I was one of the first people he found on LinkedIn, and he said he was so happy again to see that other people are talking, and now he is a powerful force talking about these
Nice.
things and everything. And yeah, and that's what we need. And then one more question I have for you is it sounds like that you've had support from the very top
Uh,
administration. So when you go to other, as you're looking to go to other hospitals and help them, do you mostly like focus on the hospitalist component there, or your early meetings would have to be with like the president or the CEO or something? Like that
yeah, it
they
would
you have to have
actually
buy-in from them.
they get the buy-in from them. It really needs to be with all departments. And one of the things that we uh, will do is talk to the executives, talk to leaders from nursing, from pharmacy, because it's a door-to-door approach for a patient. It's not compartmentalized in their mind in terms of the hospitalist did this and the nurse did that. They come through the front door of the hospital and they leave, and it's all one uniform experience to a patient. So yeah, it's definitely important to talk to everyone. So executives, various leaders, And of course the hospitalist team members and leadership as well needs to be 100% a uniform
Mm-hmm.
buy-in. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Well, of course, Doctor's Day is coming up the end of this week, so your episode will be published next week after Doctor's Day. But I want to wish you a happy Doctor's Day and
Thank you.
thank you for everything that you do for
I
patients.
appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. And same to you. Again, really have appreciated the attention that you and all of your guests have brought to physician wellness and burnout and everything. That's really encouraging to see.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, we have to keep sharing our stories, and that's where the healing occurs. And if we all raise our voices together, right, that's how we're all gonna make a
Sure.
change. And
Absolutely.
and do you have any advice for patients who wanted to support their doctors?
You know, I'll be honest, even just a thank you is sometimes is all we need. I say our team members, they don't do things for praise, but um, just a simple thank you sometimes is great. And, if you want to send a card to the
Mhm.
hospital, to the leadership team, that goes a long way too. We're glad to do what we do. We don't need praise or thank yous,
Mhm.
but doctors are people too. And, a physician could be going through a very hard time. Maybe they're feeling discouraged, and just
Right.
someone saying, "Hey, you really helped me out and made a difference," sometimes can be more uplifting than you may realize.
And that's true. And once or twice I've sent it because I sent all my doctors thank you notes. And once or
Mhm.
twice when I went to see the doctor, then they happened to say it just came at a time, when they needed that. So
Sure.
not to underestimate, a heartfelt thank you or a heartfelt.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks again. So how can our listeners get in touch with you, John?
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, John Huff, and Lion Oaks. We also have a presence on LinkedIn as well. Our website, it's Lion Oaks. It's actually spelled OAKES. The lionoaks.com can get a hold of us. And again, LinkedIn, I'm on all the time and love to hear from people. It's been nice to make some connections and look forward to making some more.
Okay, all right. Well, that sounds terrific. So in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients. Patients need to care about doctors too. So stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.
Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome, John.